Let me share something peculiar about quietness in our connected era. We inhabit a reality where nearly everything gets broadcasted. Celebrations, morning beverages, twilights, emotions, joy, even suffering adorned with effects. Yet certain individuals remain entirely hidden. They browse silently, watch intently, but seldom if ever share. You probably recognize someone matching that description. Perhaps you embody someone matching that description. And here's the inquiry that constantly hovers in observers' thoughts. Why? Why would anyone elect to remain concealed when the entire universe appears to be screaming for recognition? It's simple to presume that individuals who don't share are merely timid or reserved. But that's not the complete story. Beyond the obvious, there's a whole psychology operating. One that reveals tremendous insight about human behavior, self-understanding, and the silent resistance against a society fixated with exposure. If this speaks to you, please subscribe to this channel and share this video. These insights deserve to reach those who've chosen depth over display. Observe, for certain individuals, quietness is not vacancy. It's authority. It's the capacity to determine what reality doesn't access. Because whether we acknowledge it or not, digital platforms have gradually altered how we establish ourselves. It incentivizes exhibition. It glorifies commotion. And yet, those who remain in obscurity are frequently the ones who perceive everything most accurately. They observe without requiring to intervene. They contemplate before responding. They examine before concluding. Psychologists have discovered something intriguing. Individuals who abstain from sharing regularly often demonstrate elevated levels on characteristics like self-discipline, reflection, and emotional autonomy. They tend to be less affected by social measurement and outside affirmation. In other terms, they aren't attempting to demonstrate who they are. They're attempting to comprehend it. And in a reality suffocating in exhibitions, that's uncommon. Because let's be truthful, most of what we share is not merely correspondence, it's persona construction. It's an subconscious tryout for inclusion. Every description, every image, every statement declares, "This is who I am." Do you accept? But when you cease sharing, something transforms. You begin to separate your value from virtual appreciation. You cease thinking in descriptions. You start living experiences for yourself once more instead of for a camera. And that's the hidden psychology behind numerous individuals who don't share. They desire genuineness in a realm where everything feels choreographed. They don't despise digital platforms. They just can't locate themselves in it anymore. It's not about being opposed to technology or unsociable. It's about declining to compress your existence into highlights. Because when you've witnessed how simple it is to distort perception, you start appreciating what can't be shared. Quietness, substance, flaws, reality. For certain people, the choice not to share arrives after a type of emotional depletion. Perhaps they once did broadcast everything until one moment it ceased feeling genuine. They understood that every occasion they shared something meaningful, they experienced an invisible obligation to keep surpassing it. They weren't existing anymore. They were acting. So, they withdrew quietly. No declaration. Just a gradual vanishing from the timeline. But here's what's frequently misconstrued. Not sharing doesn't signify not experiencing. It doesn't signify they don't value. It frequently signifies they value excessively about being present, about significance, about safeguarding what's precious. There's a notion in psychology termed psychological ownership. It's the sensation that something belongs profoundly to you, a reflection, a recollection, an encounter. And when you share it, that sense of ownership diminishes just a fraction. The experience becomes communal property, vulnerable to criticism, misunderstanding, even ridicule. So individuals who don't share are frequently protecting their sense of ownership over existence itself. They preserve their experiences untainted, confidential, authentic. And perhaps that's not sorrow or isolation. Perhaps it's a silent form of liberation. Because consider it, when was the previous occasion you did something significant and didn't experience the impulse to broadcast it? When was the previous occasion you smiled, mourned, or accomplished something and didn't instantly consider posting it digitally? That impulse, that requirement to exhibit is not innate. It's trained. It's the result of a decade of reactions, reposts, and dopamine circuits conditioning our minds to associate affirmation with significance. And when someone exits that mechanism, it can seem like defiance. But it's also restoration. They start rediscovering the purity of doing things for themselves once more. Preparing without capturing it, exploring without documenting it, experiencing without articulating it. In that realm, something emerges. A type of self-recognition that doesn't require spectators. But not everyone who doesn't share is operating from a position of tranquility. Some are motivated by apprehension. The apprehension of criticism, dismissal, or being misconstrued. Digital platforms have intensified a subtle form of worry psychologists term self-presentational pressure. It's the perpetual consciousness that you're being observed even when you're not. And for numerous people, that's draining. They fear that what they express might be misinterpreted or worse, disregarded. So, they withdraw, not because they don't desire to bond, but because the expense of exposure seems too steep. They desire to be witnessed, but only genuinely, not shallowly. And paradoxically, sometimes the most reserved individuals digitally have the most active thoughts in their consciousness. They're not missing. They're brimming. They just select stillness instead of show. There's a profound philosophical dimension to that quietness. In a reality that perpetually declares, "Look at me." Selecting invisibility becomes a form of self-definition. It's declaring, "I exist beyond your observation." They might browse through others' existences acknowledging, reacting, sometimes hurting, but they rarely broadcast because they comprehend something most don't. Not everything you encounter is intended to be observed. Sometimes the most significant things in existence, development, sorrow, metamorphosis, occur quietly, unwitnessed, unshared. And when you've experienced enough of those confidential metamorphoses, you start understanding that being unwitnessed is not identical to being unimportant. It's actually where character is established, not displayed. This is where the contradiction exists. Digital platforms were created to unite us. Yet, it frequently leaves individuals experiencing more disconnected than ever. When you don't share, you cease pursuing virtual intimacy and start reconstructing genuine ones. You begin recognizing who reaches out to you without requiring updates. You discover who recalls you without prompts. That type of bond, raw, unbroadcasted, seems weightier, more comforting, and infinitely more genuine. And the individuals who don't share, they inhabit that realm. They construct relationships that don't require evidence. They discover solace in the unpublished experience, and they allow existence to progress without converting it into material. Part of this is also about character stability. Understanding who you are even when nobody's observing. When you're satisfied in your own presence, you don't require spectators to confirm your significance. That's not pride. It's serenity. And paradoxically, the same individuals who don't share frequently have the most captivating narratives to share. But they preserve them for when you're positioned across the furniture, not across the display. Because genuine bond to them isn't calculated in responses or reactions. It's in mutual quietness, in gazes connecting, in joy that doesn't require observers. These are the individuals who contain universes within them, who analyze profoundly, notice perpetually, and comprehend quietly. They don't require reality to celebrate their presence. They just require to experience it. And perhaps, just perhaps, in a reality so desperate to be witnessed, their quietness isn't a deficiency. It's a reflection, a reminder that not everything significant has to be broadcasted, that sometimes the most human action you can perform is to preserve something entirely for yourself. You know what's captivating? The longer someone remains away from digital platforms, the more they begin to perceive reality differently. Hues appear deeper. Duration seems gentler. Exchanges seem richer. It's as if distancing away from the chaos makes everything genuine once more. Because when you cease performing, you start living. There's a silent magnificence in navigating through existence without requiring validation of every movement. You're not considering about perspectives or illumination or descriptions. You're just there, completely present, inside the experience instead of outside it. And that's something digital platforms rarely permits us to accomplish anymore. But the psychology behind this extends deeper than preference or inclination. It's grounded in how our minds handle affirmation. Every occasion we share something digitally and it receives attention, reactions, responses, appreciation, our mind releases dopamine, the same substance involved in reward and dependency. Over duration, we begin to desire that affirmation. We start considering in terms of broadcastable encounters instead of genuine ones. Now, imagine someone who opposes that circuit. Someone who intentionally selects to detach from the dopamine pattern. That's not apathy. That's control. It requires self-recognition to oppose something created to maintain you engaged. Individuals who don't share frequently have a powerful internal locus of authority, a psychological concept meaning their sense of value and contentment originates from within, not from outside approval. They don't require the virtual confirmation of you're sufficient to accept it. And here's what's even more captivating. Research demonstrates that individuals who take extended breaks from sharing or absorbing digital platform material frequently experience a quantifiable improvement in emotional equilibrium and existence fulfillment. Because when your sense of character is no longer being perpetually reflected back to you, it becomes substantial, it becomes genuine. You're no longer modifying your existence into something palatable. You're experiencing it in all its chaotic, magnificent, unedited intricacy. And perhaps that's the genuine defiance, to remain complete in a reality that incentivizes pieces. But quietness digitally doesn't constantly signify calmness. Sometimes it conceals weariness. For numerous people, digital platforms became a location where they once pursued bond, but concluded experiencing exhausted. There's a subtle emotional tiredness that originates from observing everyone's highlight compilations while you're still attempting to assemble your own behind the curtains. You start evaluating even when you don't intend to. You start questioning your significance even when you understand better. And ultimately some individuals decide to distance away not out of resentment but out of self-protection. They understand they don't owe reality a performance. They don't owe an explanation for their quietness, and they don't require to keep demonstrating their content just to be trusted. That's one of the silent realities of this generation. We've mistaken exposure with importance. We presume that to be significant, we must be recognized. But genuine meaning doesn't require observers. Some of the most significant experiences of your existence, the ones that determine who you are, will occur without a single individual observing. No cameras, no descriptions, no spectators, just you. And perhaps that's what those who don't share comprehend best. They understand that confidentiality is not isolation. It's connection with yourself. Because when you cease broadcasting every reflection, you start listening your own once more. You start reconnecting with the fragments of you that got misplaced in the chaos. Your silent aspirations, your unexpressed anxieties, your inner guidance. And that's something deeply meaningful in today's reality. It's not a retreat. It's a return. Of course, it's not constantly peaceful. There are experiences of uncertainty, of questioning if quietness makes you invisible, if you're declining behind while everyone else is displaying advancement. But with duration, you start recognizing something magnificent. Your significance doesn't vanish when nobody's observing. It's still there, constant, like the sound of a silent space after a tempest. And perhaps that's what genuine assurance resembles. Not the vocal proclamation of self digitally, but the peaceful certainty of self away from screens. Some individuals declare, if you didn't share it, did it even occur? But the reality is, things that determine you most rarely make it to the timeline. Your development, your disappointments, your confidential achievements, your silent demonstrations of compassion, they inhabit in recollection, not media. And perhaps that's sufficient. When psychologists discuss about genuine self-expression, they emphasize alignment, the harmony between who you are internally and who you present to reality. But in the era of effects, that harmony is perpetually warped. You begin to exist as a variation of yourself refined for acceptance. So when someone selects not to share, it might be their method of remaining aligned, of maintaining that delicate reality between their inner and outer reality. They don't require everyone to witness what they're experiencing to confirm that it's genuine. They don't require to document every twilight to recall how it seemed. They experience their existence completely and quietly. And here's the contradiction. Those who exist quietly frequently experience existence most powerfully. They're not distracted by the performance of it. They capture details others overlook. The method illumination transforms on a surface, the hesitation before someone talks, the noise of remote joy. They are present, and presence is the rarest commodity in a reality constructed on attention. But sometimes that very presence makes them misconstrued. Individuals might characterize them as disconnected, enigmatic, even distant. Yet, if you examine closer, their quietness isn't vacancy. It's substance. It's the peace that originates from no longer requiring to articulate yourself to be comprehended. There's a silent assurance that originates from not requiring to be recognized by everyone, just comprehended by a select few. And that's what the individuals who don't share comprehend best. They understand that not every reality is intended for the masses. That some fragments of you deserve to remain untainted by algorithms and perspectives. Because once something becomes public, it ceases being purely yours. It belongs to analysis, to criticism, to movement. And perhaps some experiences are too sacred for that. So the next occasion you recognize someone who never shares, don't presume they're concealing. Perhaps they're just existing. Perhaps they discovered serenity in the silent spaces of existence. The ones not illuminated by the blue radiance of a display. Perhaps they're the ones who've recalled what the rest of us forgot. That being unwitnessed doesn't signify being isolated, that being silent doesn't signify being vacant. That sometimes the most genuine expression of who you are is quietness. Because in the conclusion, we're not intended to be performances. We're intended to be individuals. And the individuals who don't share, they remind us of that every silent, unedited, magnificently invisible day. Reprova.